I'm super excited for episode 14 of The Real Side of Real Estate. We have Carlos Rodriguez, a U.S. investment specialist. Love having him on here. How are you, sir?
Thanks for having me on.
No problem. Thanks for coming on. It was an amazing tour we did
Yeah,
out there in Cleveland. It was a really thought out tour. Tell us a little bit about the tour.
Well, going down to Cleveland, I'd been going down for a while, and I figured, you know what, why don't I ask a few other people if they wanted to come, and it kind of just evolved into the tour that you ended up coming on, and a little bit more formal, made it more of a educational kind of thing, and because nobody knows, what Cleveland's about from a real estate perspective, and I've been down there now since 2020, investing in the real estate market down there. Duplexes, triplexes, everything up to apartment buildings, that kind of stuff, and it's a far different market than up here. Price point, a ton of different options. The opportunities, I've found anyways that it's a blue ocean at this point. There's not much competition. From comparing it to the Ontario market, for example, we have a ton of real estate investors, and it's always, we're always competing over,
of course,
the same stuff.
Yeah.
Right?
So what brought you to the U.S. market? Like, tell us how Carlos got started in his U.S. investing. How he got started in investing? You must have started in Canada.
I grew up in it. My grandfather and my dad were both very successful real estate investors. My dad was a real estate agent in Hamilton.
Oh, wow.
And, I kind of grew up watching what he was doing. My first kind of foray into learning about real estate investing was basically holding the other end of the 2x4 while he cut it, right?
Yeah.
So, and I kind of, learned by watching. But there comes time when you gotta do it on your own. And that's when you start learning, is when you've actually dove into it. And I bought my first house back in 2007 in Hamilton, and
was it a single family or
single family home? It was actually a rent to own.
Okay.
Was in the beginnings of when everybody started doing rent to owns in 2007 or shortly before that.
Yeah.
Bought my first house on the east side of Hamilton, kind of renovated that and held that for a little while, grew my portfolio over time. Ended up doing a lot of renovation projects, a little bit of development, very small developments, but got to a point where I couldn't grow here anymore. Things were getting starting to get a little bit toxic, as far as for investors, with all the new taxes, the new rules coming into play.
Lots of changes.
Lots of changes with getting access to capital, and so it wasn't fun for me here anymore. Sure, there's opportunities to make money, but I mean, at this point, the risk to reward just wasn't there anymore.
So when did you know that you wanted to try something new? Like when was your eureka moment? Like, hey, I wanna try a new country. I want to try a new area.
I work with different investors, and the investor that I was working with at one point didn't want to try any different markets other than the Hamilton market at that point. And so I went out looking for a particular project, ended up finding a really nice property, huge. We could have done so many things with this, but we ended up, it was a bungalow on the property. Need a little bit of love, a little bit of renovation. We could have put a unit in the basement, and that was the plan, was to put
a duplex,
make it into a duplex. Okay. There was enough land that we could put an additional unit in the backyard. We could have put a couple of additional units, really.
Wow.
And frankly, if we had knocked it down, we could have put a couple of townhouses. But at the time, they wanted something like $750,000.
So we're talking about recently, like
we're talking very recent. Yeah, we're talking probably end of 2019.
Oh, okay, 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah, and so once we did all the math, he would have been out, maybe about $600,000 out of pocket before we saw dime one of any kind of cash flow.
Any kind of okay.
And then we would be splitting this. And I mean, the cash flow was maybe $1,000 that we would have been
So
splitting
you're looking at as a rental.
as a rental. Exactly.
Okay. Okay.
At that point, it didn't make sense to be doing any flips. This was when the market had already shifted, and
Starting to get hot.
well, no, actually going downhill. We would already. This was past the peak.
Okay.
Okay, and so I mean, there were still avenues to make money, but you know, when you look at it with the amount of money that we would have been spending, only to be making, you know, the little bits of cash flow on that size of a project, it didn't make sense.
Well, yeah, for sure. Like it all depends on the property and who's doing the work. And I've done many flips in Hamilton, and I've been very successful. And I've done duplex conversions. A lot of the money goes towards the contractors if you don't have the right team behind you.
Yeah.
Realtors, lawyers, accountants, all you know, your whole team. So I completely understand where you're coming from. So what made you think about possibly doing the U.S. after going through that experience?
Yeah, well, I mean, after seeing that, seeing a couple of different projects and kind of coming up with the same conclusion, you know, I started back in 2008. You know, when the crisis hit and everything went downhill. I was looking at some property, just kind of glancing at property. This is even before I ever bought a property. You know, I remember looking at some properties in somewhere in Jersey that you know, they wanted 17,500 for the house, and
the
it
whole
was
house.
cash. It was a triplex.
Wow.
Right? I'm like, you know, I'm kind of looking at this, going, that you put that on a credit card? That's crazy.
Yeah.
And the pictures didn't look too bad. I didn't do anything because, frankly, I was a chicken. You know, I didn't know anything about the U.S. or anything like that, or even this was before I started buying property, so I had no experience. So, you know, and it just kind of started remembering that stuff. I started looking on MLS, you know, to see what the market had down there. Started in Buffalo, you know, and just kind of ended up landing on Ohio.
Oh, okay.
You know, through going through different seminars and other people that had been investing down there and seeing what they were doing. Came across Ohio because, I mean, the landlord-tenant rules down there are favorable to the landlord.
And that's great that you brought that up. I want you to talk about how much the difference is compared to the LTB here.
Oh, it's like night and day. It's like night and day. There's no comparison. I mean, you know, the last time I looked here, there were 52,000 cases waiting for you know, just to be heard.
Yeah.
And I mean, what is that? 2 years worth of waiting?
That is a long time of
Right?
waiting. Yeah.
Can you imagine having somebody not pay you rent for 2 years? No thanks.
I can't, yeah, that's ridiculous. And in Cleveland or in Ohio, how is the laws there?
Completely different. It really kind of comes down even to the municipality, but for the most part, if somebody doesn't pay you rent,
Yeah.
you give them the eviction notice, you go to court, you get your judgment, and if you get that judgment, they're out within maybe 3 weeks,
So within a month.
pretty much.
Wow. So
Right.
that's one huge pro. That's a
Absolutely.
massive pro for any landlord, any investor, people that have went through, you know, it already with tenants, and people that are going through it with tenants. That's a huge plus. So that alone would attract a lot of attention from investors.
It's gold.
Yeah.
It's absolute gold from that perspective. Cash flow, I haven't seen numbers like this in a very long time.
So the cash flow is there. So I see some of the properties, you know, they're priced pretty competitively. Like you're from 60,000 to 300,000, but like you're getting way more bang for your buck. So how's the rents out there?
Depends on the area, but I like to kind of focus on the Section 8 program that they have there,
Okay.
which is subsidized housing. And you know, the government pays you directly the rent,
Oh, interesting.
and you can ask a bit of a premium because they want more landlords to help with the subsidized housing,
Wow.
right?
Is there a certain area that they do that in, or is that within all of Ohio that they do that?
So it's America wide,
Oh, it's America wide.
right?
So Section 8 is kind of like uh, ODSP that we have here in
Very
Ontario.
different. I mean, in the very general sense, yes. But it doesn't. The difference basically is you don't have to be disabled to get Section
Oh,
8.
okay.
It's
Okay.
more dependent on financial hardship. You can still work and have some subsidy. In fact, I mean the Section 8 program doesn't pay all of the rent, but I mean I have tenants that are only paying $9 out of their entire rent
$9,
a
you said?
month. Yeah.
Wow.
So,
So is it there's got to be some cons to that kind of program though, right? Is there any cons to like a Section 8?
well,
Any
and I get that kind of response. So subsidized housing, are you going to have really bad tenants? The fact is, it doesn't matter if you have a low income tenant or somebody with a lot of money. You have to vet that tenant, right?
Sure, for sure. Yeah.
And depending on how well you vet that tenant, will dictate the experience that you end up having,
For
right?
sure. I completely
So,
agree
I
with
mean,
you.
look at that guy in California that had the squatter for in
Well, the
his
Airbnb.
luxury Airbnb,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, for
So,
sure, for sure. So the screening or the vetting, is it similar to Canada with the credit check, employment check, reference check? Is it like that, or is it more like based on credit?
well, it depends on the criteria you want to put, but very much similar. I mean, you can certainly do background checks, criminal checks. The thing with the United States is that their perspective on privacy is very different to ours, and I mean, there's pretty much all the information on somebody on the internet if they're an American citizen,
Really?
right? I mean, I'm speaking generally, right?
So
But
you could type in their name and see.
sometimes you got to pay a fee or whatnot, but yeah, you can look up pretty much anything about anybody down there.
Well, that's pretty cool if
It's
you're a
kind of scary,
landlord.
but
It's good if you're a landlord if you're trying to vet your tenant. So going back to like you starting on this journey in the U.S. in Ohio, you said, did someone bring your attention to Ohio, or you just stumbled upon Ohio, and you're like, hey, let me do some research?
it was
Like,
just a matter. I mean, just kind of getting my hands dirty and looking.
oh,
You know what I
okay,
mean? And you kind of come across. I just kind of went state to state. I wanted to be within proximity, right? Driving proximity. I didn't want to be
and it's not that far of a drive. I did that drive like when I went to the tour. It was
right.
about 4 hours, 4.5 hours.
Yeah. So an easy drive,
It's easy
but I
drive,
didn't
yeah.
want to be going to Florida, for example, or Arizona,
Yeah,
where
well,
everybody's going, right?
that's a way longer drive, right?
Exactly. I
Yeah.
mean, you're talking a couple of days, never mind a couple of hours.
Yeah.
So, I wanted to be within somewhat close proximity, and I wanted a different price point. I wanted to see what kind of price points were out there. So I just kind of went along the lake, and I mean, I already had some familiarization with Detroit and that area, and kind of let's see what happens when you expand the area out, and ended up landing on Cleveland, and I mean, the greater Cleveland area has got 3 million people. Half of them rent.
Wow.
And then after going on a couple of tours.
So you went on a couple tours before you
Well,
made the
when I
decision.
say that, I mean I just kind of picked up. You know what? Let me take a couple of days and
Oh, you
talk
went
to
on your own.
a real
Okay.
estate agent and say, listen, I'm coming down. I want to see a couple of houses. Show me the market. And
So you did your own due diligence.
you got to. You have to be boots on the ground at least once,
Yeah,
right?
I definitely agree with you. I definitely agree with you.
Yeah. So once that kind of went down there, saw, how old the properties were, the kind of opportunity. I mean, if you like renovating, there's a ton down there
Oh
that
yeah,
is just,
I seen that. Yeah.
there. I mean, you could go one block and it looks beautiful, and then the next block over, you've got a bunch of abandoned houses.
And you know what? The thing, Carlos, is it's eye opening. The first time I went when I went on your tour, I had a perception of Ohio and Cleveland that was completely the opposite of what it was.
Like,
And I was thinking it would be more rough, and like there would be more rough areas, and there'd be more tense city and more a dirty city. I was
just gang
pleasantly surprised.
violence
Yeah, and
and
I
things
was
like that.
pleasantly surprised. The city's clean. There's not any tense like there is in our city. Um, there's only certain areas, certain little pockets that are really kind of rougher, but even in those pockets, you don't really know that when you're driving through there. It doesn't really show. Um, I was pleasantly surprised. I'll be honest with you. Like I went the first time with you. I had the opportunity to go back with boots on the ground with Wealth Genius, and you know what? I took that opportunity to go back, and two times I've been there, I love it there, man, because it's the people are nice. The Midwest people are super nice, super friendly. Um, like you said, the reasons that you've given for the housing, that's one huge thing. The other thing is taxes are low there, right?
Corporate taxes are non-existent.
There's no taxes,
Yeah.
and I think they want to get rid of taxes, income taxes. I don't know if you heard about that program, the Section 8 that you discussed. So there's so many and like it's it's a beautiful city. Like the downtown core is beautiful. It's got a lot of sports teams. It's got a lot of activities for family to do. Like I didn't think of it as a tourist attraction place. I thought of it, Cleveland,
Somewhere
be
where
careful.
you drive through, right?
Yeah, be
Yeah.
careful, but like you said, you don't know. We can't judge a book by its cover, right? We got to actually go there. And Hamilton had that for a long time. You know that. We're from Hamilton, right? And people drove by the,
The
steel
only thing they see
factories.
is that what they see over the skyline, right?
Yeah, and they're like all that pollution in Hamilton, and how do those people live there? But there's lots of great places in Hamilton. You got to come in to see it. Um, so that brings me to my next question. So I want to ask you, how was your first property in Ohio? Tell me about that experience.
Well, that let's put it this way: if there were mistakes to be made, I hit them face first, and wallet first. But first one that I bought was a duplex in Cleveland, and the numbers, I mean, were just. I was seduced by the numbers. You know what I mean? I bought it for $35,000.
Wow.
The thing had, I mean, each apartment were 3 bedrooms, 1 bath, massive, massive bedrooms. I mean, it must have been a good 1,000 square feet per apartment.
So they were side by side purpose built kind of?
No, up and down.
Up
This
and
was
down.
up and down.
Okay.
Older building in kind of up and coming area. The city was putting a bunch of money into that area. So you saw that there was
It's
it was being brought up,
Mm-hmm.
right? They were just in the beginnings of it. It wasn't too far away from the Cleveland Clinic,
Oh, nice.
which is one of the larger employers down in Cleveland.
Yeah, it's huge.
And I mean, just the fact that when you look at it, you're like $35,000. Oh my God, that's like a tenth of not even. It's a fraction of what we pay up here. I was like, I could just put it on their credit card. And I mean, it still needed renovations, and ended up putting a bunch of money into it. But my first finding the right team takes a while, and unfortunately, ignorance is not bliss when it comes to finding your team. I mean, I'm no slouch when it comes to vetting people and whatnot, but unfortunately, the best vetter still makes mistakes from time to
So
time.
what happened, man? I'm curious to find out here.
I ended up finding, and he was a referral from another experienced investor,
Oh, okay.
who was investing in Cleveland, as well. And anyways, I was looking for a project manager and property manager, and this guy was apparently, he would do both.
Okay.
And had done some fairly large projects. When you vet them, we kind of the tons of 5-star reviews, and had government contracts and all this other stuff, and you're like, okay, well, let's. I mean, just speaking with the guy, he knew what he was talking about. So okay, let's give it a shot. So I had him and his team start the renovations on the project, and that's when it kind of everything started going downhill from there. You know, I went down after they started to kind of check on the project and see how things were going. Seemed to be moving in the right direction. Unfortunately, he couldn't meet with me because he had other projects. But he was like, "Hey, go down there. My contractor will show you around. And,
I see.
we'll get things done." It's like, okay. I didn't need to talk to him. I just wanted to see
The project, yeah.
what was going on with the project. So it looked, they were in the midst of tearing stuff out and doing the demo. So I was okay. Everything's on track. Came home, and about 2 weeks later, I get a call from the contractor. I'm like, "What is this guy calling me?"
Okay.
I said, you know, the my project manager, his name was James. James isn't paying us. I'm like,
Oh
uh-oh.
my God.
And I had already, and I mean, the money was just flow through James because he's the project manager.
You've already paid James.
I've paid James a
Oh
good
my
deposit,
God.
to get things rolling, and he's holding onto the money, but he's not paying the contractors. So the contractors start calling me and said, we're into your project X amount of dollars, and James isn't paying us.
They've done more work than they've been paid.
Exactly.
Oh my God.
So I'm like, okay, well, let's see what's happening here.
Mm-hmm.
Call up James, and I hadn't told him that I've spoken to the contractor because he was very adamant that he didn't want me talking to his guys because he was afraid I was going to steal his contractors and so on and so forth. Anyways, so I didn't tell him that I had heard from the contractor, and I was like, "James, it's been a while. Haven't heard from you. Haven't had any kind of
Give me an update.
an update on what's happening.
Yeah.
I'd like to see some pictures of
Mm-hmm.
what kind of work has been done, and I also would like to know. Send me an accounting of what's been spent."
Oh, okay.
Okay,
What did
and I
he
left
say?
it at that. His response, "No problem. You'll
Okay.
get it by Wednesday." This was, the week before.
Mm-hmm.
Give me a week and I'll get it to you. Okay. Wednesday comes and goes, nothing.
Nothing. Oh.
So I, get back on him, and finally, a week goes by, and that's when I get another email. But this time the email only has pictures. And from experience, you can tell, you can estimate how much money has been spent given what these pictures show me as far as progress.
Mm-hmm.
And they didn't show anywhere near.
Were they past the demo stage?
They were past the demo stage, but not very far.
Oh my God.
You know what I mean? So I leaned into him a little bit and gave him hell for it. And I was like, "Listen, I wanna have a conference call between you, me, and the contractor. I want to know what's going on here and why
What's the holdup, right?
why the project is being held up."
Mm-hmm.
He's like, "No problem. I'll set it up." Okay. Now I'm talking to James, right? He's going to set it up. So I called up the contractor and I said, "Listen, this is what's happening. Be ready to be on a call on such and such date.
With James.
James is going to call you.
Yeah.
And we're going to figure this out." Okay, good. Because I wanted now that scenario so that James would basically hang himself,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right? And we would have it out there.
Yeah,
and,
you could have a
and
resolution, maybe.
exactly. Get things back on track. So the day of the conference call comes. James calls me up, and the contractor is on the line, but it's a different guy.
It's a different contractor.
Well, the contractor had a partner that I had never met. When I was down there the first time, the partner couldn't meet with me because his mother was in the hospital.
Okay. Okay.
This comes into play in the story. Okay. So the new guy. So the first contractor that I met was Tony. Second guy that I meet, his name was Frank. Frank's mom was in the hospital. So Frank's on the phone.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And he's, "Oh, I'm sorry, things are behind. We recently had a tragedy in the family."
Oh,
This
yeah.
is him telling me.
Yeah.
My mom died, and
Oh, my God.
that's why I'm behind. I'm like, great, I can't. If something had happened to my mother, I wouldn't have been at work either. So he's like, "Give me 10 days, and we'll be back on track." I'm like, okay, that's fine. But always in the back of my mind, why isn't Tony on? Why isn't his partner on the call like I told him?
Mm-hmm.
So later on that night, call ends, we go about our business, and I'm, thinking, okay, 10 days from now, I'm going to be here again.
Mm-hmm.
Tony gives me a call. the other
The other
contractor,
guy,
the
yeah.
original
The
guy that I was
partner.
talking to.
Okay, okay.
And it was, and so I'm like, "Whoa, Tony, why weren't you on the call?" And
Like
he
what
goes,
call?
"What call?" Right?
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm like, wait a minute. We were supposed to. I told you that there was going to be a call. Blah blah blah. And he, I was talking to Frank, and Frank told me because his mom had died and da da da. Tony starts laughing. He says to me, "I don't know who you were on the phone with, but that wasn't Frank." So James had gotten, I think,
Oh my God.
another party to come in,
To
pose as
act
Frank.
as, oh my
Yeah,
God.
because he knew that I was gonna give him what for
Oh
on
my
what was
God.
happening with the.
So how'd you resolve this? This is the
Well, I mean, I ended up losing some money on this. It deteriorated quickly after that. I mean, we tried to not let Frank or James know what was happening, but ultimately it came down to that James was trying to basically play switcheroo with the contractor. He was trying to bring
oh
in somebody that would do the job cheaper and pocket the difference
oh
on
my
what I was
God.
quoted.
Oh my.
So ultimately ended up firing James.
Mm.
And when we were trying to do it in a way that I could recoup as much of my money back before we actually got rid of him.
Mm.
But unfortunately, things progressed so quickly
Mm-hmm.
that it got to a point where, well, we cut it here.
So you learned a lot on your first one.
Like I said, if there was a mistake to be made, I hit it face first. And on that one, I ended up losing a little bit of money. But ultimately, we did get the job done.
That's great.
And the house is cash flowing like crazy now.
And you know what? You stuck with it, and that's a resilience of you. And kudos to you for sticking with it.
Thank
Most
you.
people probably would have said, "You know what? Cleveland's not going to work out for me now," and just ran the north of the border again, and just gave up on the hopes of Cleveland. But it goes back to the importance of a team, right? Having a proper team, property manager, contractor, realtor. That's very important in any state in any country,
Exactly.
And you've learned a lot since then. And now look at you. How many properties do you have there now?
Just closed on our 12th property.
12 property.
Yeah,
Congratulations, man.
and
That's huge.
yeah, it's another. I mean, I've stuck with the kind of fixer uppers, where we can kind of build in the value. And one thing that I found the first time that I went down was that the level of rentals that they have that they're putting out to the market
Yeah.
is nowhere near what we're accustomed to up here.
Oh, I know. I've seen that.
Right?
I've seen the quality of rentals there and the quality of rentals here. But it makes sense if you look at it, Carlos, because the rent that we're asking here, of course, the tenant has every right to ask for quartz countertops and, washer and dryer in every unit. I remember seeing a building in Cleveland and there was like, I don't know, 12 units and there was like one washer and dryer
Yeah.
in the whole building. And I was like, wow. And these tenants are okay with it. But then you look at the rent that they're paying, it kind of works the same way, right? You're not paying the high rent, right? So to your point, like the quality of work that needs to be done there, because I have a contracting company, as you know, and the work that has to be done here, it's completely night and day. And you've experienced that. Now you're on your 12th property. That's amazing, man. Congratulations
Thank you.
on that. And like to stick with it. And I'm sure you have lots of stories. 12
There's a
properties
few.
in.
There's a few. There's a few. Yeah. I mean, there's certain neighborhoods that,
What's your favorite neighborhood? Let me ask you that.
my favorite neighborhood. Oh man.
Because I've heard lots of stories from the realtors, and they're always pulling me. And I had a realtor actually. Shout out to Brett. He said, "Oh, I hate Shaker Heights because it's got power point of sale, point of sale."
Well, that's what. If you're outside of the Cleveland proper,
Yeah,
right? If you're going into the municipalities, most
Yeah.
of them have that point of sale.
point of sale. Yeah,
And
but it's not that difficult. Like the handle's got to work, a window's got to work. It's not.
yeah,
it's
it
not
can get that. Well, it depends on who your inspector is.
Okay.
So for the audience, the point of sale is basically when somebody wants to sell their property in those municipalities, the city has to come in and they'll inspect for any kind of deferred maintenance. So, if you haven't painted the walls or if there's a crack in your driveway or whatever, all that stuff has to be addressed.
And to clarify, it's not just Section 8,
No.
right? This is point of sale for certain areas in Cleveland.
Yeah, like basically anything with Heights in the name. So Cleveland Heights, Shaker Heights.
That's why he didn't like the Shaker Heights.
All of those municipalities, Euclid.
But do you have any properties in these areas with the point of sales?
Do I have them? No, I have most of them. I've kind of stuck with Cleveland, but Cleveland is now looking to introduce that point of sale as well.
Oh boy, is that going to be a pain in your?
It depends on how they treat it. Some municipality, like East Cleveland, which is a municipality onto its own, they have a point of sale, but they don't make you put money aside. Like other municipalities will have you put. They'll come and they'll estimate how much work needs to be done on the house, and then they'll put a price tag on it, and then they'll have you put, $1.25 for every dollar they've estimated in escrow.
Oh my God!
Then
Before
have
you
before you do anything, before you move in or get any kind of occupancy.
But I heard you could put that on the seller also too, right?
Yeah, but most sellers, if they're already putting their house on the market, they already know
They're done with it.
they don't want. They'll put a clause that seller will not do any repairs.
But they probably take a less price. Like we could probably
you definitely use it in negotiation.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So.
But the city will estimate the amount.
Oh my God!
Say, listen, you got to put $1.25 for every dollar we've estimated in escrow. Go do the work. We'll come and re-inspect it,
and then they'll release.
They'll release that money.
Yeah, that's the con, right? But with all the pros, I think point of sale is not that bad of a con based on like I've done lots of projects out here, and you know what, when I have inspectors here, they're just as tough, man. They're just as tough, and I've done duplex projects, many duplex projects, and they're just as tough. So I understand where they're coming from, where it's got to be safe and everything. So I wanted to ask you, Carlos, what's the next steps for you? What are you planning to do? I know that you're still doing the bus tours. You know what I mean? You have one coming up in July.
Yep.
When is that one?
Next one is July 26th to the 28th.
Perfect.
It's probably going to be the biggest one I've done so far. It's if anybody's interested, they can go to the URL that I've got is Cleveland. Oh my gosh.
Well, we'll put the link in the bio.
Okay, perfect.
We'll put the link in the bio,
Perfect.
and if anybody wants to join the tour, you can reach out to Carlos. We'll have all of his link in his bio. We're also planning on doing some stuff together, right? We're planning on doing some U.S. seminars together. I have years of construction, experience and real estate experience, and when I looked at that market there in Cleveland, I was just like, man, it's
you can't help but kind of just wipe away the drool a little bit.
And I'm looking forward to working with you because you got a ton of experience working on those parts of, I've been working in the Midwest and the States, and I don't. And I find it a new challenge, and I want to step up to that challenge and see what we can do together. And, once we have our seminars ready, we will have, we'll let the audience know. We're going to put the links in the bios for them to join the seminars. We're going to probably do one in Hamilton or both of our home cities. And we're planning on a bus tour also. But thank you so much, Carlos, for coming
Thanks for
on,
having
brother.
me. Definitely.
And it was, you know what? You have a wealth of experience in this market, man. I can't wait to.
A lot of bruises, a lot of scars.
I can't wait to hear more of your stories, man.
Well,
thank you so much.
thanks for having me.